very respected cardiologist in the area, and he's going to give us a little insight on what may have happened to Damar Hamlin, the NFL player for the Buffalo Bills, who we now know had a cardiac arrest episode on the field. After a hit, he stood up, and then, then now he's been in the hospital and sedated, and we'll get more on that. His uncle, Damar Hamlin's uncle, has spoken out and given a little bit of an update, and here it is.
It's heartbreaking seeing him like that, right? I mean, we were in Pittsburgh watching it on TV, and his little brother was there with us. And when he seen his brother drop like that, and when I tell you I never seen him cry or scream like that, like, we were trying to calm him down, like, yo, it's okay, he'll gonna get back up, he'll be back in the game, woo. Next thing you know, it's 10 minutes later, they're doing chest compressions. It's a half hour later, they still not playing yet. I'm like, yo, what's going on? What's wrong with my nephew? And then, like, when I say, like, now we were all in the room crying, man, we were all in tears, man. And I'm not a crier, but, like, I never cried so hard in my life, man. Just to know, like my nephew basically died on the field and they brought him back to life. I mean, that's just heartbreaking. And to see all those grown men crying and all the emotion, man, it really was a gut punch, man. And I would have been crying no matter who it was, but for it to be my nephew, it had that much more impact on me, man. And I'm just glad he's just still alive and able to fight and trying to get better and recover.
Again, Damar Hamlin's uncle.
Do you imagine? You're at your family member. You're watching it live the same way everybody else in the world is seeing it, and it's your blood out there on the field.
Right.
Oh, I can't imagine.
And like you said, the emotion of
right.
Because you see so many times. Okay, or there's an injury, but he's going to get up. He's going to, there'll be a thumbs up or something at some point, and it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then the CPR, that's, I think, when everyone's like, oh, no.
And the lack of information, too, because you were saying as you were watching it, it was all of a sudden the coverage was gone.
Yeah, they weren't showing the replay, and they weren't showing him.
Mm-hmm.
And they normally will show the person.
Sure.
They're like, oh, he's moving, and, they have this and that. And people are like, well, they had a lot of people around them. No, they have cameras everywhere.
I mean, anybody who's watched an NFL game can see, you know that they will show what they can if they can.
Absolutely.
Wow.
His uncle continues.
Well, his heart had went out, so they had to resuscitate him twice. They resuscitated him on the field before they brought him to the hospital, and then they resuscitated him a second time when he got to the hospital. So I just want to show my gratitude for the medical staff that were on hand, because if not for them, my nephew probably wouldn't even be here.
And so that was new information that he's been resuscitated twice now.
Mm-hmm.
And then also read, the uncle, I believe, continued in saying that he was in a prone position. He was face down while being sedated. And there's been conflicting reports that he's on a ventilator, or they're trying to get him to a point where he can be on a ventilator. And then, so anyway, we're trying to figure all that out. We do have our good friend, a longtime friend to the show. It's been a while. Dr. Phil Nahser. Good morning.
Dr. Nahser.
Hey, good morning, Jared and Katie. How are y'all?
Hey, we're great. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to.
So in your professional opinion, and again, there's a lot we don't know, what, in amongst your colleagues, what do you think may have happened to Damar Hamlin?
So the discussion around the tables yesterday were that this is probably commodio cordis. Sudden cardiac death in an athlete is pretty rare. It's either a congenital abnormality or it's a thickening of the heart. And like everybody's saying, these athletes are so well screened. They have exams all the time. So it would be very unlikely that it's a congenital thing. I think commodio cordis is the most likely etiology, and it also goes along with the impact. So it looks just like a commodio cordis type event. So commodio cordis is sudden cardiac death that's caused by a blunt impact to the front of the chest, and it's very rare. They started keeping track back in the 1990s, and there's been about 200 reported cases since then. But it's very rare. It's typically caused by a rather small but hard object, like we learned about it in lacrosse. So it's a lacrosse ball, a baseball, hockey puck, typically not a softer ball like a soccer ball or tennis ball is not going to cause it because it doesn't impact the heart that way. And it doesn't actually cause physical damage to the heart. It causes just an electrical arrhythmia.
Okay, so, yeah, because, anyone who watches football, I mean, obviously, as the everyday person, you get hit like that, or you're making the hit because he's on defense. But he also took, the receiver came into his chest. It happens all the time. And each
and you were
play,
saying it didn't seem like it was, we weren't there, we didn't experience it, but you said looking and watching it didn't seem like that hard of a hit.
it was probably one of just that game, and there's
Yeah.
only been like 10 minutes of the game. It was probably the least hard hits that I saw during the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it has. It has more to do with the timing of the hit. So there's a very narrow window in the cardiac cycle where the heart's vulnerable, and if it receives an impact they say between 20 and 40 milliseconds, right as the heart is relaxing, you can start this arrhythmia called ventricular fibrillation. So it has more to do with the exact hit right on the surface of the heart at exactly the right time, and it doesn't really depend so much on the degree of impact. That would be, if it's a huge impact phenomenon, that's cardiac contusion. We see those in car wrecks and things like that. It's less trauma than that. It's not traumatic to the heart. It's traumatic to the chest wall, perhaps to the ribs, but not to the heart.
We're talking to Philip Nahser, cardiologist, well respected in the area, and in his field, obviously. Now, a question that I know we have is that they performed, has been reported, CPR for 9 minutes, and also the AED, shocking him back to life, or shocking his heart back maybe into rhythm. But is there like a time window for CPR that once you get past a certain time frame where there's a lot of damage that's going to, as far as oxygen, not having the oxygen that you need for your brain and your body? I mean, do you think they're within that window?
Well, 9 minutes is pretty far out, but as you were saying earlier, I actually did not see it live. I saw the replays the next morning, and then when you go back and try to look at it and actually start timing things, it became very difficult to actually see the whole thing unfold. So they were on him fairly quickly doing CPR, but and I don't know at what time they brought out the AED and did that, but so 9 minutes is a bit long to go with CPR in the hospital where we have supplemental oxygen. We've got trained people who do CPR all the time. No, you can't do CPR on someone for a number of minutes and then they come back. I hope that's the case here. 9 minutes seems a bit long.
Yeah. And Dr. Nahser, I wanted to ask you, so I mean, we're talking your professional opinion and what you and your colleagues are talking about would be that suggesting it's commotio cordis, which is like a really freak thing to happen where there's impact to the chest at a time when the heart is at its most vulnerable. I know you have said you associate death with it, but do you have an idea of if he'll recover?
So the research, early on before we knew what was going on, the survival was pretty poor. But recently, it's in the mid 50s is the survival rate. I think I read somewhere that 56% survival rate of patients who have of athletes who have commotio cordis, and it primarily is in young male athletes. I mean, that's the primary group that we see this in.
And then there's a report late yesterday, and the uncle had mentioned it as well, that he was face down, and the thing I read was something to relieve pressure from his lungs, so that it'd make it easier for him to breathe. But is that unusual?
So that's an interesting thing, and I just learned of that this morning. That is a trick that we learned and became very popular during COVID. People with COVID pneumonia, we learned that when they're on the ventilator, if you put them face down, you allow the good part of the lung to be up and sort of clear. Now, I don't know that this implies that he has pneumonia. Perhaps they're using it in this state, but that's not a typical cardiac arrest position from what I know. But it's interesting, and I'll certainly be looking more into that.
And I don't know if you have experience with this. Is it unusual for a high-profile story like this for the medical center and the hospital in Cincinnati to not give an update? Or is that something the family could say, we prefer you not to give an update? It's just unusual. They themselves have not given any updates or held a press conference or anything.
The family or the hospital?
The medical center itself. No medical professionals have given an update.
Oh.
I think that's pretty standard for HIPAA rules. Sometimes I'm surprised at the amount of information that we're actually able to get about high-profile cases or high-profile people. So it's not unusual in my world because we're not directly involved. It's nice that the uncle was able to speak and give us some details, but it's not unusual. Perhaps the family really just wants everything to be kept quiet, and hopefully he's making a great recovery here very soon.
And they want to wait till everything is.
Which is smart.
I would think so. Yeah, I would think so. I don't think it's unusual. While it's interesting and it was viewed by millions on TV, it's really not for us to know right now.
Absolutely.
Which is so rare in this world because it's like, it's a private matter. We actually have to respect that.
Right. It was just hard, definitely hard for us. Well, Dr. Phil Nahser, he's great cardiologist. I'm actually making an appointment with him myself.
Fantastic. I got a lot of questions about AFib. Seems like a lot of my family members are having some issues with AFib as they're getting older. And I'm like, what's going on with y'all? So, Dr. Nahser, I might be calling you later.
I'll be happy to talk to y'all anytime.
All right.
And we know he follows the HIPAA laws, so you have to worry about him exposing my unhealthy. I do it anyway on the air anyway, but my unhealthy lifestyle.
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret. But seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll have you back
You're welcome.
on in the future, especially with this and other. We have so many medical questions, and we're like, who do we know that's smart?
Yeah, because when we speculate, it's not good for us.
Yeah, it's
really not.
It sounds really dumb.
We get a lot of letters,
Like you mispronounced heart. And like, and I'm trying. All right, Dr. Phil Nahser, thank you so much. You have a great day. He's awesome.
So great.
I appreciate people that are experts
and
smart.
The thing that I love the most is that Dr. Nahser was the first to say, this is a trick we're learning because we're constantly learning.
Yes.
And professionals are constantly learning in the practice of medicine. And so that was a great thing that he said.
And to me, that's reassuring because it's always evolving as the things improve and you learn more about the human body on how to help us live longer and better.
And he was talking about how this happens a lot. He was talking about baseballs. I'm looking at a pie chart now of like the different sports where this has happened, and 61% of all the instances of that cardiocortis is from baseballs.
I would have never guessed that.
And hockey pucks
softballs,
and lacrosse.
hockey pucks, yep.
Ugh.
And where's football? Where's that land?
There's no reference to football on here at all.
Well, I guess it's the first one that we
this
know.
is-
That we know of.
Yeah.
I mean, there's even one that says tennis ball filled with coins. So that's happened more often than football.
What sport is that?
That's something that Jason Goodman does with friends when he's drunk.
Yeah, that's a rich
Seriously.
people sport.
Yeah, that's when you're bored and rich.
Put our money in these balls.
Fill this with gold. Put gold in my tennis
What
balls.
should I do today? I know.
And
Was there a
throw
gold
it-
bar in this?
We'll throw it at the poorest person in the room.
What a weird stat.
Yeah.
Well, the tennis ball's filled with coins.
I mean, it has 2 asterisks next to it, and it says, "Note this was filled with coins." It specifically says that on the study.
That is so
Mafia tennis.
really
Golly.
bizarre. What in the world's going on there?